with me. Again, Steve Quayle, Michael Yon. Steve, I'm going to kick it to you. Let's rock.
Well, thank you. And sat123.com, one of our sponsors was Tina was the one that helped Michael when he was at the Darien Gap in the Panama area, basically give real world live Doug events. Yep. And I know you remember this, Michael, but you were saying, Steve, look at the buses behind me. Chinese soldiers, obviously that's who they were, bus after bus after bus, and it was real time. And ladies and gentlemen, I consider this a treat. I consider Michael probably the most well-informed globe-trotting journalist who's also battle-hardened, battle-tested. And when you listen to him, there's no nonsense. And I told him, and Michael, again, thank you for coming on. And Doug just heard me. I said, Michael, go for it. There are no barriers because it's crazy time. So, Michael, thank you for coming on from Japan. And, you've got the floor. You need a break, hand it back. But we want to hear what you have to say because I don't think anybody's opinion, I mean this, you're my friend, obviously, but I don't think anybody's opinion I respect more than yours. And that's saying a lot after 40 years on talk radio podcasting. So thank you for what you do. Go ahead, sir.
I super appreciate the very deep compliment. And I'm going to replay that so my wife can hear it. She's awesome. Hopefully she'll come in here. The Misako Ganaha, we have gone all over the world together, like the Darien Gap and oh Lord, Argentina, and we were just over in Denmark actually looking at the Danish Strait. And we also just stayed for a month with Catherine Austin Fitz, more than a month with Catherine in Netherlands, studying these things that we're going to talk about, which is we're not on vacation. Our idea of a vacation is an antique bookstore for like an afternoon or something, and I'm serious about that actually. It sounds kind of funny sometimes, but when I say that, but it's actually that is what we do. And but what I'm getting to is 7 days a week, years on end, we study these things that we're going to talk about, which is this process war that's unfolding. That we tend to look at wars as if they were events, like World War I, or the Great War, later called World War I and World War II, and those sorts of things, as if they're separate. They're not separate. And what's happening today is part of that, actually. It's part of things that have been going on for many centuries. In fact, if we talk about how did we get here is very important. Historical context is vital to understand how this continues to unfold. And as an example, maritime globalism started, we could arguably say in 1415, if we make that as an arbitrary moment in time. That is when the Portuguese sailed around the corner through the Strait of Gibraltar and hit Ceuta, which is an enclave in Morocco. I've been down there on the Moroccan side of Ceuta a few years ago with Chuck Holton, actually. But Ceuta, so the Portuguese and the Spanish, they had kicked the Muslims out of the Iberian Peninsula just before that. So now suddenly they were able to do something, the Spanish and the Portuguese. So the Portuguese started by returning the favor, and they attacked Ceuta, got a bunch of gold, that sort of thing. So so in 1415, you could say, boom, that's when it started. If you want to argue a starting point, that would be maritime starting point, right? And I mean, in a big way, right? And not in a small way, and then you started to see the development of things like compasses. We look at compasses as if, you can buy an $8 compass for children. I got one hanging off my lamppost here somewhere. I have compasses all over the place. It's too far to reach. But, these compasses now that you just take for granted, that thing would have been super ultra high tech in the 1400s, right? A compass that you can sail at nighttime with. Of course, they still didn't have great clocks yet or great maps. So you had, Prince Henry, the navigator, comes to life and starts developing better navigation techniques and better ships and that sort of thing. Anyway, let's get up to from 14. This is important what I'm going to tell you because it sets the stage for where we're at now. It's very important. So the Spanish start getting involved. We remember that one guy, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He ran into Cuba and thought he had hit Japan. slightly off course. Of course, back then they didn't know that the world. A lot of people still thought the world was flat. A lot of people still do. Maybe it is. I don't know. It looks round to me. But the thing is they didn't even. The Americas were not on the maps. In fact, this is a globe called the Erdapfel. It fell off. It's mine is only a couple hundred years old, but this is the oldest existing globe is called the Erdapfel globe, and it means in German it means earth apple, but it means potato. In southern Germany, in Bavarian, and in Austria and Switzerland, it means potato. So this is but America is not on here. So this is the oldest existing globe from. Well, this one's only a couple hundred years old, but the original is like. The oldest one that still exists is like 1493-ish, right? Or maybe 14. They're not sure, 1493 or 94. But that was when. So on this globe right here, this is just a mock. This is just a copy of it, a couple hundred years old. But the Americas are not on here. There's no North and South America on here, and Africa is all messed up. It's like in Japan, it's like way out here. It's actually the shape of Japan isn't completely crazy, but so this, unfortunately mine fell off the stand. The stand is broken. I got to get it fixed because it's quite old, and so I'm holding the Earth like Atlas here. We can do an eclipse from the globe behind me. But anyway, I like to have fun in my little library. So in 14, that was what the world looked like to them. There was no Americas on the Earth. So now you've got the Spanish and the Portuguese involved, right? The Portuguese started 1415, then the Spanish 1492, right? Now the big architecture now that gets involved is the Vatican. Pope Alexander VI wanted to deconflict between the Portuguese and the Spanish. This is very important because it plays in right into today, right? And in fact, this is the original treaty. This is the Treaty of Tordesillas, right? This one's only from 1927. Mine is a copy, but the Treaty from Tordesillas is the actual facsimiles of the papal bulls from the Treaty of Tordesillas that happened in the early 1490s after Columbus got back, and the Pope was trying to get control of the Portuguese and the Spanish so they didn't fight each other. And they made this. Is that in focus? So this is a copy from 1927. My book's not that old, so this book is from 1927. And so, but this is copies of the original documents in the 1490s, right? So this book is filled with copies of documents from the 1490s, not right when this globe was out. So this globe may have really actually been sitting beside them when they made that treaty. I don't know, but it would make sense actually. But the Pope is like, he doesn't want the Portuguese and the Spanish fighting each other because he's the higher architecture is the Vatican, right? So they did this treaty, the Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494. Then that's why Brazil speaks Portuguese today. So he drew that line, and on the east side of the line, Brazil fell on the east side, so Portugal got Brazil, and the rest of South America and whatnot, the Spanish got. That's why the rest of the places speak mostly Spanish and indigenous languages, right? So that's why Brazil speaks Portuguese today. So this is important. So that's the superstructure at that time was the Vatican, right? Now, as time goes on, Prince Henry the Navigator and all that techniques, they start to really, compasses get better. They start to be able to make better maps. Now you've got the Spanish and the Portuguese really spreading out around the globe. They're finding place like really getting to Japan. And so then they come up with another treaty about 30 years later, the Treaty of Saragossa, right? So, that's why today Philippines is named the Philippines. It's named after, King Philip VI King Philip from, not the sixth, but from Spain, right? So this is, Spain, the next treaty, Philippines was, anyway, not to go into that. I've got all the maps and you can see where the treaties were. But what I'm getting to is the superstructure back then was the Vatican, and its two main players were Portugal and Spain, right? Now, over time, as we know, Protestants emerged and these other oligarchical systems emerged, and then the Dutch gain, start going full-time maritime. You get others get involved. You get French and obviously the English at some point, right? Everybody starts to join up, so we get more and more globalist, so more and more oligarchical structures, and then so what I'm getting to is over time this thing evolved, right? Finally, of course, in 1609, my family came over. They were with the Virginia Company of London, right? And they had sold shares. I mean, not my family. My family, the Easton side, were on the Sea Venture ship, which was the flagship of the Virginia Company of London. They were going to Jamestown, which had been they had been working on Jamestown since 1603, 04, 05, or 06. They're starting to bring women. So one of my great grandmothers was on that ship with one of my great grandfathers, right? The Eastons. And so they get shipwrecked on Bermuda in 1609. This is important because this will set the stage of how so they would sell shares in these colonies, right? They were basically company towns. All the 13 original, they would sell shares in these things. They were, if you want to make a town or a colony somewhere, you had to raise money, right? If you want to go to Mars with SpaceX, you got to raise money. If you want to make a colony on Mars, somebody's got to come up with the money, right? And so they would sell shares in these things. And so so you would have these literally company towns or company colonies, right? The Virginia Company, that was just one of many. And so these things went on all over, eventually all over America and in, say, Panama, all over the world, right? That's how when the Scottish tried to make a colony they made a colony in Panama, in Darien, actually, and they tried to go across the Darien in the 1690s. They raised a bunch of money in Scotland, and they tried to make a path between the seas and the Darien, right? And actually, they picked a really great location for it, actually, but they didn't make it. The Spanish and the English, made it difficult, as did the mosquitoes, and so the Scottish did two different missions in the 1690s, lost about 2,000 people. They finally went bankrupt, and that's how Scotland got absorbed into the United Kingdom. That's how the United Kingdom was formed. Scotland tried to do a colony. They sold a bunch of shares. They went bankrupt. England absorbed them, right? So that's why it became the United Kingdom of England and Scotland. Had Scotland succeeded, it'd probably be the United Kingdom of Scotland and England instead of England and Scotland, right? So, but Scotland failed. So that's why many Scottish don't realize that's why they're part of the United Kingdom today, was because they failed in their colony in making a path between the seas in Panama. So in about 1707, they became United Kingdom, right? With the Articles of Union, right? So 1706, 1707 is when that was unfolding. Anyway, but the bottom line is this is a normal thing that's been happening around the world. Company towns, company colonies, all these sorts of things. United States has finally formed out of our 13 original colonies, and that's, and as time goes on, there's more and more players in the game, more and more players, more and more rich oligarchical systems. People come and go. The Spanish finally got knocked out of the saddle. At this point, the British are knocked out of the saddle. I mean, they still got lots of money in the background, but they don't have the big navy they used to have. So things come and go, but the basic architecture is basically the same. You've got corporations that get this stuff going, and sometimes the corporation might be more like the Vatican, right? You've got these larger structures, right? These larger structures doing grand strategy, not strategy, but grand strategy, right? So on the grand strategy, you see every war that you've ever studied comes down to three things: routes, resources, and ideology. Some wars have all three: routes, resources, and ideology. Other wars are just about maybe a route, maybe a resource, or maybe an ideology. But some wars, really the big ones, will be routes, resources, and ideology. So over time, you'll see many new countries were born in the name of globalism, like, for instance, the GCC countries, the Gulf council countries there in like Kuwait and Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, right? And did I miss any? So those are the and then of course Iraq formed, and Jordan and Syria and all these different countries, right? And so those were formed in service to controlling that area for routes and resources. Those are not organic countries. I'm in Japan. This is an organic country that formed of its own. It was like a thing that grew up on its own. It was not a corporate entity, right? This is actually what I would call a real country, I would say a real nation. But a lot of the countries are synthetic. They were just created out of almost thin air, like Kuwait, like Oman, Bahrain, all those, right? They were made. Panama. We made Panama on November 3rd, 1903. We made Panama so we could make the canal. Panama used to be part of Colombia. Of course, Colombia was a synthetic country too. So Panama was part of Colombia. Colombia didn't want to play ball, so we sponsored a rebellion. November 3rd, 1903. We made the Republic of Panama, and then we opened the Panama Canal in 1914. Now, Israel is a synthetic country. It was formed in 1948, but in reality, it took a long lead up to that. Why does Israel even exist? Israel exists because once the Suez Canal was opened in 1869, that became the spinal cord of the British Empire, is what some people called it. And some of the Englishmen were warning, the Egyptians will take that. We'll make a lot more money for a while, but the other people that are going through here are going to end up, and the Egyptians are going to take it, and they can shut us off. That's the spinal cord of our empire, some of the English were saying, right? And they were right. They were absolutely right. Egypt did take it, but France opened, did the Suez Canal in 1869. Then they gave a shot. They gave a shot at the Panama Canal, and they went bankrupt there. Actually, I just had this book come in the other day from Australia. This one's from 1881. This book is an original from 1881. The French are trying to make a canal across the Kra Isthmus, which China was just in Thailand talking about this 3 days ago, right? This is in French, but the French were good at canal building. So this book is from 1881, and it's got maps of 3 potential routes across the Kra Isthmus in here. That's why I was talking with an antique map store in London, and I said, "What's the oldest maps you've got on the Kra Isthmus?" And because I want any of the oldest canals. I've had some for years, but I'm always looking for more. And they happen to find this antique bookstore in Australia that have this old book with 4 old maps of the Kra Isthmus. Now, if you're going to close the Strait of Malacca, the Kra Isthmus is a bypass, right? Anyway, so what I'm getting to is all this stuff is old. All the stuff you're seeing right now, like building a bypass over the Kra Isthmus, they were talking about that in like 1667. You know what I mean? They were, I think, talking about it much earlier. But actually, Doug Casey and Masako and I, we went down to the Kra Isthmus about a year and a half ago. And but what I'm getting to is all of these routes and whatnot, they do change over time. The routes change, like when you open the Suez or you open the Panama Canal or that sort of thing, and the resources change. Like we weren't using a huge amount of lithium 200 years ago. You know what I mean? But what I'm getting to is the fights over these routes and resources and ideology. There's nothing new about it. And the players are mostly very similar, actually. The locations are mostly approximately the same. Like Malacca has been the scene of so many fights. But anyway, back to Suez. When Suez opened in 1869, the British were like, hey, we got to get control of that thing, right? So they started sponsoring, the Zionists. They started sponsoring the, Theodore Herzl and all those guys, and to get Jews down there to get their land, right? Because they wanted to it wasn't about a homeland for Jews. It was about control of the Suez Canal, right? Just like the 5 civilized tribes in the United States were the civilized tribes of Indians, which really meant taxed Indians. I've got the original census here, actually, from 1890 of the taxed and untaxed Indians. But basically what I'm getting to is the same game plan always happens. Demographically, they'll move people around. They'll move them around to get control of this, or we're constantly doing censuses of places. If they find lithium under your feet in a place like North Carolina, or some important form of silicone or something like that is under your feet, and it's really needed and it's worth hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars, guess what? You're the new Indian. Because the way that the globalists map out the world, they don't map it out with human rights in mind. They map it out with, these are our obstacles. We got mountains here, we got mud, we got mosquitoes or whatever. We got these Indians who either go along with the program or they don't. If they don't, they're going to go to war, right? They're going to get rid of them, right? That's the way this goes. I mean, they're terraforming people all the time. It's been going on. The Romans were doing it. Romans have been doing it. I got one book here from actually 1932. It's a book about the Bulgarians and the Greeks and the Turks swapping minorities. And it's historically telling you how they did it, how they set up the legal frame. Go ahead, sir.
Let me jump you forward though, because here's the deal. And I'm not trying to shorten it, but what we're at right now is obviously Ari McMaster said at the end of the day, it's resources and religion, obviously Muslim versus Christian and all that stuff. But where are we right now, Michael? Because look, we're watching in essence the Red Sea. We're watching all of the major trade routes, and that's what you're, I think, going for, being taken over. And he who controls the sea routes controls commerce. And so now we're watching, are we not at this point, it's obviously the 1st of May in Japan, but now we're watching the potential for WW3. So if we can, I want to jump you forward to where we're at today, okay?
Yeah.
I love old maps. I have old maps that go back to really old maps, real ones, and maps tell a bigger story than any novel ever told. But the point being is, where are we right now? Because I don't think people have a reality check on where we are at as the United States of America, feigning ultimate power where we no longer have the power. And you've been in the military and you've watched the denigration of the U.S. military. You've watched the denigration of the U.S. Navy. You've watched the denigration of our whole missile development. Hypersonics change the face of the battlefield. So as a warrior, and obviously Green Beret, etc., where are we? Because I think it's like the fuse is lit, and this is what I think people really want. When they talk to me about you, they said, ask Michael where he thinks, because how do I say this? Very few people will draw all the threads together as you can, because you've been in the field, you see what's going on, you've got a military perspective, and I won't use the word that begins with cluster, but it seems like we can't cut the muster with all of the things that are going on. I mean, we're seeing crazy time. We're seeing people that are absolutely bent, in my opinion, on destroying the U.S. military from within. Obviously, the vaccination, obviously, all of the things designed to destroy the military. But the point is, where are we tonight on whatever we're at, April 30th, May 1st in your area, and what you see play by play? I got to jump you forward, okay, because there's too many questions for you.
Right. So now we've set the table. You can see this is nothing new. Like, I'm watching these rivers form, So the flow of what's going on, when you realize this is a process war, and it's a process that's been going on for many centuries. Now we're at this date of what's going on. What's going on? They're fighting over routes and resources. It's the same Godzilla versus Mothra going on. You know what I mean? It's King Kong and Godzilla are throwing things around, and they're fighting over routes and resources. And there's a weaponized ideology is often weaponized, right? So ideology is often one of the weapons. Sometimes it's what they fight over as the ideology. Other times it's one of the weapon systems. But so what we've got here right now is, I think what we're going to see is a lot of famine, and I've been saying this for 6 years actually. And I think what we're going to see is the Zionists, because the Zionists are an architecture that was really developed by the British. I mean, it was organic, but then the British really put gas on it to get control of that region, right? To get control of Israel, because location. We're talking routes and resources here. And right now, Israel is extremely important. Israel is, I mean, the Suez is right there. They want to build the Ben Gurion Canal. There's gas off of Gaza. They want to build the Indo-European corridor from India all through UAE and Saudi and all that up through Haifa and Gaza, right? This is a big deal. Location, 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 and so, but the Zionist structure, I think they're going to work. They're clearly working to create famines, global famines. They want to, on their ideological level, they want to reduce the global population by billions of people, right? And specifically, they're also they're working very hard to destroy the United States. They're working very hard to destroy Russia and China and others, like where I'm at now, Japan. This is not a safe place. They are working very hard. And remember, one arsonist can outrun 1,000 architects, right? And so it's easier to do arson or to cause catastrophe than it is to build society and make it operate, right? But I think one of the main goals right now, which is actually quite obvious, is to put China into famine, right? So how could you put China into famine? One thing I've warned Japanese and others about for years is if you see the Strait of Hormuz or the Turkish Straits, especially Hormuz, closed for any length of time, you better get ready for famine right here, right? I mean, years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I flew in to see one of the old prime ministers of Thailand. I wrote the last 2 pages in his book. The name of the book's A Simple Truth. And I flew in from Europe, and I was warning him, hey, if Hormuz or Turkish Straits close, even Thailand could go into famine. And I know a lot of Thais are like, no, you don't understand Thailand. We got all this. I've been all over Thailand. I've seen more of Thailand than most Thais have, right? You know what I mean? I've been in every province, right? I've studied it. You can clearly go into famine, right? And the same with the Irish. Irish would say the same thing. Oh, don't you understand? We export enough food for 20 million people. They always say that. I'm like, I get it. Guess what? Some of the worst famines in the world happen where the most food's produced. That's reality, right? Like Ukraine or Henan province, China or whatever. But the point is it's clear that there is a gross attack on humanity in general. That's why you see these floods of people coming in, which are, part of the same war, which is, the demographic overrun of Europe and the United States and other places, here in Japan as well. Many people say Japanese would never do it. And I'm like, yeah, they would. I see it right here. And they're absolutely doing it here too, right? But the point is famine. How would you let's concentrate on China. How would you put China into famine? One of the things I would do, understanding more of the problem set, I would close Hormuz. I wouldn't just close that. I would wipe out that infrastructure so that they can't put it on the trains or any other way, get it over to China. I would be wiping out exactly what they're doing. Fertilizer infrastructure, energy production, all those things. And I would be doing it on a global scale, not just what directly goes to places like China, but Nord Stream, even though that's between Russia and Europe, right? Which we successfully predicted many times in advance on Nord Stream. And Groningen, I would do that as well, because you're causing systemic weakness. You're setting conditions globally, systemically, right? But let's just concentrate on China for a moment. If you're going to go for China, you're going to go for Iran, of course, and you're going to and you would go for Malacca. You go for Malacca. You would go for Brazil. That's why I think you're going to end up seeing a war between Argentina and Brazil at some point. I think Argentina is going to go for the Malvinas, Falklands, sooner than later. And I think eventually you'll see a war probably after that's done, at some point, you'll see a war between Argentina and Brazil. And the purpose of that war, Argentina and Brazil, will be about food. It'll be about the bioceanic corridor that goes from Brazil through Paraguay, through Argentina, through Chile. And, of course, the struggle you see up in Panama is important as well, because that is, I spent a year there since Biden was installed in Panama looking at that. China was slowly taking it over. So that's a fight between Zionists and China, just like Argentina is a fight between Chinese and Zionists, right? And Malacca as well, right? So you'll see, I think, there'll be interruption on Brazil, one way or the other. And that means also they'll have to control Drake Passage around the southern part of South America, right? So if you're going to cut off food from Brazil to China, you need to cut Panama route the bioceanic corridor and other corridors and Drake Passage, the Drake Strait down there, and some other Malacca, of course, and some other things. A lot of the food that goes to China comes from the United States. That's easy enough to cut. A lot of the food production is owned by Chinese. That doesn't matter. I mean, they'll just take it, right? So I think what you're going to see now, a lot of people say that doesn't make sense, and therefore it doesn't make sense. But actually, as you know, Doug, you're a private investigator. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense to me for somebody to do something, right? That's irrelevant. Whether or not it makes sense to us, it's not relevant. I mean, there's like whole wars that start with, should we start the war today or not? Well, if the bird lands facing east, we fight today. If it lands on that tree and faces west, we stay in the village. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard in your study of warfare, being a warrior, being in battle zones, have you ever heard anybody say, well, I'm just going to do what I do. I go by feeling. I mean, I would say the man who made that statement never read Sun Tzu. And I don't think most people know this, Michael, you do, but Mao came to power promising a bowl of rice to every Chinaman every day. And so food is the ultimate weapon, Henry Kissinger's famous statement, with oil we control the world, with food we control people. And then, what's her name? Barbara Marx Hubbard said, we decide who lives and who dies, the UN. So at this point, we're seeing global famine, i.e. geoengineering. We're seeing 60 to 70% of the United States in total worst case drought conditions. Rocky Mountains, 5% of snow. That's all they got. 5 compared to 100%. And good night. Lake Mead and Lake Powell. I mean, those things are, basically being flushed because the amount of humans needing water. And so water is the most critical thing. And now what did Iran do? They bombed all the desalinization plants of the, UAE, Dubai, all of the nations pretty much on the Persian Gulf needed desalinization, Saudi Arabia. So the water is a big issue, but most people would know, Doug, you live in Lake Erie area. Do you know who controls the water in Lake Erie? A Swiss company named Nestle. They made a deal for the water coming out of Lake Erie. So in essence, then you go north of that, you have Hydro-Quebec. When you're talking about just the navigable waters, most people don't understand that anything that flows downhill has a start uphill. And now we're watching, the two biggest rivers in the United States, obviously Mississippi and the Missouri, or as they say there, Missouri. The point being is the water is life. And what we're watching is the war, in my opinion, and I'd like you to address this, on the resources. And you don't go anywhere. You can't do anything without water.
Right. Well, I think there's a website actually in Europe, the water infrastructure that's being removed. It's in English, actually. You can select different languages. I forgot the name of the website. I haven't been on it in some months, but there's a website. They're like mapping it out. They're proud to, so water infrastructure can be removed many miles from you and you'll never know because it's way over there. It's somewhere uphill from you, and then one thing, a big storm comes and you get washed away because you didn't realize somebody removed water infrastructure, right? And I would not doubt, by the way, that we're going to end up seeing Mosul Dam get attacked in Iraq. And the reasons for that are routes and resources. The Iraqis and the Turks would like to build a corridor there that goes near Basra. I've actually been on those two oil platforms, Abot and Kayot, down there with the British and the U.S. navies. But one of those is closed now. I think Kayot or Abot's closed. It doesn't matter. But anyway, but the point is there's been a trade corridor there for many centuries that goes through what is now Iraq, and it goes through and it comes out near Basra, right, or at Basra. But so they want to build that corridor that direction, the Turks and the Iraqis. Now the Zionists don't want that, of course. They want the route to go through. They want it to go through the greater Israel. Right? So they want to wipe out Iraq. That's why we attacked Iraq. That's why we attacked. If you look where Iraq and Afghanistan is on the map, they're the bookends of Iran, right? They're the bookends of Iran. I spent 2 years in Iraq and 2 years in Afghanistan. Those are if we had succeeded in both of those places, we could have raised an army from the Afghans to attack Iran, and we could have raised an army of the Iraqis to attack Iran, right? And this was clearly the plan, but it just didn't work, right? It just didn't work out. But that's often how things go. You see the Ukrainians now, they're being genocided in the war, which is obviously intentional, and they'll end up just recruiting people from Africa or something to do the rest of the job. They'll do that in Canada. They'll do that in the United States. They'll do a draft, kill off as many American patriots as possible, and then recruit people from all over the third world into the U.S. military to do it here. That's normal. This is the normal form of warfare. For a lot of people, this seems exotic and conspiracy theory. It's just because they don't know anything about war. This is normal business. It's absolutely normal. In fact, the Spanish had an idea for a while back 400 years ago that they would come here to Japan, raise up an army, and go attack China. Unfortunately for the Spanish, the Japanese were smarter than the Spanish, and they could fight better, and they chopped them to pieces, right? So it didn't work out, but that was their idea, was to raise an army out of Japanese to go attack. I mean, that's normal. Like, look at the British. They hire Gurkhas. I've been out with Gurkhas quite a lot, and they take Gurkhas all over the world. I've been in combat with Gurkhas over in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? So, I mean, the point is, this is normal business, is to recruit foreign armies. Sometimes they recruit them like the French Foreign Legion or whatever, right?
Yep. And then as you see now, Hegseth floating, Secretary of Defense, that's questionable in my opinion, but he's floating, we're going to have to draft. And I think that, obviously with someone with your experience, I'm telling people, draft age kids, you don't send them off to a war that's not a war. And I mean, it's a blood sacrifice, in my opinion. And, just like you say, and what are we importing into this country? We have a lot of illegal immigrants that will be given, what do they call it? When you go to war for the country, they give you citizenship. There's a word for that, But anyway, don't you see that's what's happening here too?
Yeah, and keep in mind, like when I was in Iraq in 2005, I did a dispatch about some of the soldiers I was with in the Deuce 4, which was a unit in Mosul, an incredible unit. Some of the soldiers were not American citizens, and they went down from Mosul and helicopter and all that to do their ceremony. And I was actually quite happy. I was like, these were serious soldiers. I was doing combat with them a lot. I was like, they should definitely be giving you a U.S. citizenship, right? And so this is actually an old game, because as an American, if you fight for America, I tend to feel like you should be you should be given citizenship. However, that can be abused. That can easily be abused. They can just take all these Haitians and everybody else into the army and raise them up against us, and that is what is going to happen. It's clear that the Canadians are doing that right now. They are doing it. This isn't a matter like they might do it, they could do it, they got a plan to do it. They are doing it, right? And so it's a big deal. And they're not only that, the Canadians are doing medical assistance and dying. They're putting people to death in their hospitals. I mean, it's over the top. The things that they're doing is straight out of 1984. But the thing is this is old forms of warfare. Again, there's nothing new about this except now we have iPhones and computers. But the idea of going and raising foreign armies, let's go back to Iraq. So we were raising and training. I spent 2 years in Iraq. So I was there as a war correspondent, but I was out with many units: Marines, Army, British Marines. I was out with a lot of guys, Iraqi Army, Kurdish, right? I was out with all these guys, 2 years, right? And I would gravitate to combat. That's what I wanted to do most, was go out with them. Where's the most combat? That's where I'm going, right? And so I saw a lot of things. I saw us raising up an army, which is what Special Force, I used to be a Green Beret. That's what they even exist to do. After World War II, the OSS was split, CIA and Green Berets, right? And what are Green Berets even there for? They were originally made to help raise up foreign armies, right? So that's how, it's one of the lenses that I look at, wars through, is the ability to raise up a foreign army. Is very simple. It's not complicated at all. It's a matter of resources and just doing it, right? So we were using the Iraqis to fight Iraqis. Now let's shoot over to Afghanistan, where I also spent 2 years. So I spent 2 years in Afghanistan and 2 years in Iraq watching the same thing. We're raising up Afghans and going to combat with them and to fight other Afghans, right? But it's also clear that we were raising up armies to go for Iran. But it just didn't work out in Iraq and Afghanistan, due to incompetence or whatever. We didn't succeed, and so otherwise we would have armies right now coming from Iraq and Afghanistan. But that part of the plan didn't work out, and that actually just shows that people that resist, in this case, which was Iraqis and Afghans, who probably had zero idea about the larger plan, they fought back and then we're gone, right? We were out of there. But otherwise, Iran right now would be getting invaded by an Iraqi army and an Afghan army. No question about it.
Doug?
I'm good. This is fascinating. And I want to thank Michael Yon, and of course, Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com. Michael Yon, where can people follow you? Where's the best place for people to follow you?
I'm on Substack. So Substack under my name, Michael Yon, Yankee Oscar November. And so I go on there pretty often, and on X, just to make a few comments now and then. But yeah, that's where they can find me. And
Substack.
Right here.
All right. And of course here. All right. Steve, go ahead, sir.
Well, Michael, as this plays out now, and you've been in Afghanistan, you've been in Iraq, but you see certain patterns, repeating themselves. And at this point, how do you think Iran is going to react or respond when the United States does not have hypersonic missiles? I want you to put on your warrior, garb and say, where does the United States go when we're out technologically gunned, when we destroyed a lot of our military, United States with the whole vaccination, Navy SEALs 100 at a time quit, God bless them, they are alive still. And now you're seeing the Air Force talking about revaccinating the pilots. And, pilots they're too smart, most of them, to go along with that. So how do you think the United States, tactically, we're making all kinds of mistakes? And would you address that? And then how do you see this playing out? Because we're talking about going into the weekend. Okay, you're already on Friday. We're still on Thursday in the States. But if anything is how should I say, apparent, it's the fact that we give Iran deadlines and we never live up to them, nor do we honor them when we give them deadlines. So how do you see this? Do you believe, here's a simple question, do you believe Iran will preempt what they know is coming their way by the USA?
Well, if you step above the strategic level and go to the grand strategic level, the destruction of the U.S. military is clearly part of the plan, right?
Yep.
Not by the Iranians, but by Trump. Trump pushed the jab, full stop. I mean, in the military, the U.S. military is deeply jabbed, right? That makes an effect. And there's all kinds of other attacks on the U.S. military. But so part of the plan is to destroy our military and our country, and then replace that military with another military that will genocide Americans. And so that's clearly the plan. What will Iran do? Iran obviously doesn't want to die. And they don't want to close the Strait of Hormuz. Why would they close the Strait of Hormuz? It makes no sense, right? And that's why I was publishing this well in advance, many times in writing. Like in 2025, recently, I think it was Al Johnson found where I had published on Substack. Maybe it was June of 2025. He just found one instance. There's many more where I said, I think that Iran has no reason to want to close the Strait of Hormuz. I think that the United States / Israel will close the Strait of Hormuz and blame Iran. Now, I was like June of 2025 where he found that one instance on Substack where I wrote that, very clear words. And if a lot of people thought that was crazy, of course. And I'm like, I know it looks crazy from a distance, but when you study this 7 days a week for decades, you know what I mean? Actually, it makes perfect sense. And that's what happened, right? And it wasn't like I was taking guesses. I mean, I was really throwing for the bullseye, right? And trying to hit the bullseye. And they did it. We are the ones closing the Strait of Hormuz. Why? if you're going to create and helping to blow up all this energy, like really destroy it, if you're going to cause global famine, that's what you would do. You would also close the Turkish Straits. You would also close Danish Straits, Rotterdam, Hamburg. We were just up in Hamburg recently. You would definitely go for Malacca. You would definitely at least want to control Panama so that you can not let certain ships pass through, like food going to China, that sort of thing. And so, a lot of food goes through the Panama Canal. Only about 40 ships a day can go through. There's a lot of them anchored right now as we speak on the Pacific side and on the Caribbean side. There's anchored out there. And the ones who have to wait the longest are the food ships because their cargo is not as valuable as the ones carrying, for instance, energy, right? So you would do these things that they are doing. Keep in mind, it's a process war. So in other words, you can't build the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal in a day, and what we're talking about is much bigger than that. We're talking about a war that literally can take decades to continue, right? When Catherine Austin Fitts did an interview like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, she was on, Masako and I were watching it. And Catherine said, these people don't plan in years or decades or whatever. They plan in centuries. And I'm like, bingo, exactly. And then she invited Masako and me to come over and visit her. We jumped on the airplane and stayed with her for more than a month and doing morning walks with her and having dinner and all that stuff, right? I mean, we were just spending a lot of time with her. She got it. She's like, yeah, they plan in centuries. And until you reframe your mind to understand that, there's no chance of understanding what's unfolding. We're talking about people that don't care about their credibility because they're going to kill everybody. They're going to kill huge numbers of people. And they don't care about credibility with people they're going to kill. You know what I mean? They don't plan. They don't care. It's completely irrelevant. Their plan is to kill billions of people, erase that chalkboard, and enslave what's left of the remnant. That's their clear plan with the AI, is to enslave the remnant. These smart cities, the digital grid, the physical, look at all the AI drones that are being built now, and the robots. They'll have machine guns up on lampposts before this is over, right? It's very simple to do this. It's a process.
And again, I want to ask you about this because the digital war, the conservatives are worshiping not only the chains that are conservative, are chaining them, but they're voting for the very policies that we're going into a digital gulag where everything we think, do, and say, or we're allowed to, think, do, and say, or even eat is going to be monitored. When you heard that President Trump was building, his words, the largest data center beneath the White House. And incidentally, Doug, I don't know if you saw the story, Michael, you probably did, but they're also going to build Solomon's temple beneath the White House, okay? So everybody's always talking about the temple in Israel, temple. Well, somebody broke rank and said, no, they're building a copy of Solomon's temple. When you put those two things together, and that's not hearsay, that's real say, that's what they say, and the extinction of the American population. How can so many people be so wrong when they won't acknowledge that everything going on from Make America Great is basically, in my opinion, make America disappear? And everything that you're talking about, look, the destruction of U.S. military, that began in earnest after Vietnam. I mean, we did not have, and we do not have the military we had. Our Navy we don't have enough missiles for our missile cruisers. And I think it's problematic that it was Obama, I call him the abomination of desolation, who made the decision we would not develop hypersonic missiles. So when I hear a guy like the Secretary of Defense saying, we're going to have a Normandy-style invasion on Carg Island, I mean, he's out of touch. Hypersonic missiles and drones have changed everything. AI has changed autonomous killing machines. And it's like James Cameron, who produced the Predator movies, he said, I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. How can Americans be so wrapped in patriotism and they're clapping at their own demise? That's one of the questions I wanted to ask you tonight, right out of the chute. In essence, they're voting, paying money, donating politically to the plan that's going to enslave, ensnare, and ultimately execute them. Those are my words.
Yeah, let me show you the number of days that I've supported Trump. Newt Gingrich called me up years ago before the first election, and he was trying to get support for Trump. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to vote for a Clinton, that's for sure, but I'm not voting for that guy either. These are the number of days I've supported Trump. Total days.
Yeah,
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. Zero. And because I could see through him from the beginning. We got to stick with first principles. Alligators do alligator stuff. I grew up hunting alligators, and I grew up hunting rabbits and fishing and all this. Fish do fish stuff. Rabbits do rabbit stuff. Alligators do alligator stuff. And narcissists and traitors do narcissist and traitor stuff, right? And that's what that guy is. He is a narcissist and he's a traitor. I was writing that many times, saying on interviews way back then, that guy's going to commit treason, right? And boom. You can see it. Cowards are natural traitors. Every coward is a traitor. It doesn't mean every traitor is a coward. There's some very courageous traitors, but every coward is a traitor, right? And that guy's a coward. Trump is a hardcore coward. He's like Dr. Spock on Lost in Space. You know what I mean? He's this guy. That's why I keep Trump on my desk. This is Trump. Here he is. I keep him right here. He's right. He sits right beside me all the time, and I play with a string sometimes. There's Trump. So,
puppet on the string.
Pinocchio is one of the most famous books in all time. Is Pinocchio, right? And it's up there. If you look at the sales of Pinocchio, it's one of the top 10 books in the world. It might be number 3 actually. This Pinocchio is super famous. I think the reason why is because people understand the whole puppet thing, right? And who did Pinocchio attack first? The guy that built him, the guy that carved him and made him out of a table leg. That's the guy that Pinocchio kicked. He kicked him. And so this is why I keep this around, because when every Green Beret, or at least the old ones, I guess that they still teach them this stuff, but there's the 7 phases of a U.S. sponsored unconventional warfare campaign, right? Where we raise up a foreign army, right? In those instances. And the 7th phase, the first phase is involved, deciding that we're going to go to war. That would come from the executive side. And then the State Department gets involved. Then the CIA gets involved. And then finally Green Berets get involved after they've set the stage for it, right? And the Green Berets come in and help train the foreign armies, and then they help lead them in combat. And then you get to the 7th phase. The 7th phase is what's called demobilization. Demob. That's when you try to get those guys to stop fighting and go back to being a farmer again. But that's the phase where the Green Berets are most often getting killed, right? Because they don't want to go back to being farmers. Pinocchio's got a life, right? And these strings, often these puppets that are built, they become very powerful sometimes. Sometimes the puppets become very powerful, and the strings pull both ways. Sometimes a puppet can pull the puppet master off and kill the puppet master, or be the puppet master himself, right? And the puppets often have puppets beneath them. Let's say Charlie Kirk was a puppet of Trump, right? And Charlie Kirk seemed to be pulling at the strings pretty hard, you know what I mean? And so when it came to demobilization, somebody demobilized Charlie Kirk, right? So what I'm getting to is this is a normal stages. If we called it the 7 stages of, instead of unconventional warfare, if we called it the 7 stages of puppet making, it would be exactly, it would be parallel, right? The puppet, first we decide, do we want to make a puppet? Yes, let's make a puppet, and then we send in the CIA, find us some good wood, all right, this is the good wood. CIA goes in, spots the trees, CIA marks the trees for us, Green Berets parachute in, here's the trees with the wraps around them, cut these down, make armies out of them, right? That's what Green Berets do. Now you got your army, all these guys, lots of them, they lead them into combat for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and then you're trying to get them to stop being army Pinocchios, and they kill the Green Berets, right? So, and that's what often happens. Like the Zionists became a super puppet. CCP was raised as we helped put CCP together, right? Chinese Communist Party was like the Chinese Soviet Union in a sense, right? These sorts of things are made to do international trade, right? International, that's why the Gulf countries even exist, like Kuwait and Bahrain and all that. Percy Cox drew those borders in 1922, right? This is all about that. It's all about creating things so that we can do bigger business. I say we, somebody. I'm not doing it.
Well, yeah, but the CCP, you proved beyond a shadow of a doubt. And Trump, most people won't acknowledge this. And, man, you speak the truth concerning that guy, and you're automatically a traitor. You're automatically, they always use traitor and cowards, but they're the ones that hide behind pseudonyms or no name, defender of truth, but they won't put their name on it. But what I'm saying is that we're watching the intentional destruction of the economy. We can't even feed ourselves anymore. Inflation's destroying the country. I've seen, and you probably saw the pictures of what the Navy aircraft carrier crew was eating. A piece of looked like freeze-dried hamburger and some pretty nasty and gnarly bread. So what I'm saying is that what you just are describing to the people is so critical to understand, because I'm on record saying there is no political solution to a spiritual problem. And the guys you're talking about, let's say the ultra elite, they're really not nice people. They're illuminists, they're globalists, and they're Satanists or worse. So these are my
Satanists.
So I think that what you just did a great job of it, but there's so many puppets and so many puppet masters. But I want you to address where you think this thing's going to turn. Let's say this coming weekend, a couple days. What do you see it playing out as? Let's say if the United States uses, and this is another question I have for you, if the United States loses 2 aircraft carrier task force groups, 16, 17 ships, and we lose in the world's eyes our ability to protect, quote, our good night, the countries we used to be in association with. For instance, Japan. The United States just cut Japan's throat, in my opinion. And we're withdrawing all of our troops from South Korea, our trained troops, and from Japan, and putting them into the Middle East, and it's going to be a meat grinder, in my opinion. But what happens, Michael? Then we lose the first carrier, battle group.
I think they're looking for a reason to use nuclear weapons. Actually, I mean, you can just sense that. Let me say something kind of slightly off topic. Despite all the things that are going on, as an American, all these countries I still travel, I still feel weirdly welcome everywhere I go. You know what I mean? Like, I feel very welcome in Japan. I feel very welcome in Thailand and Denmark and Netherlands. Despite all the things going on, I don't feel unwelcome in these places. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Like nobody's like, oh, bad American. The worst thing they'll say is, oh, you got a bad president or something. I'm like, hey, I can fill in some more blanks for you on that one. It's like, but you're only halfway there. but yeah, I mean, I think that they're now looking at this from a grand strategy level. Actually, let me go again. I want to get from strategy is what you're talking about to grand strategy. I want to go a higher level than that. There is a level of people that clearly want to have ultimate power. Right? Ultimate power, like ultimate spiritual power. Now, years ago, before I went to the wars, I tracked down some cannibals in India called Aghoris, Aghor, Aghor, right? Yep. And I tracked them down, and I mean, I tracked them down hard. I don't mean I went and took some photos. I mean, I tracked them hard. I went around India, Nepal, Germany, Italy, Hawaii, right? I lived with the cult in California, right? So, I mean, it was around the world 6 times, right? So, I mean, I know about this thing. For whatever reason, I thought someday I'm going to have to fight this thing. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. And so I need to know as much as I can about it. But they called it the left hand of God. They were basically Satanists, right? Aghor in Sanskrit language means not terrible or not terrific. They think that you should be able to, everything was created by God, they say, or the gods, and therefore everything is perfect. Therefore, you should have no rules. You should do anything, right? And they call it the left hand of God, right? And so, but again, in Sanskrit, Aghor means not terrible or not terrific. It means nothing's bad, right? And so what I'm getting to is they wish to attain something called moksha, right? Which is complete release. Hindus can tell you a lot more about moksha, but they want to have, complete release, no rules. So I interviewed a lot of these people, right? A lot and lots of maybe almost 1,000 hours of videos and audios, that sort of thing. A lot, right? I mean, I really got to know this thing. When I'm looking at the top level Zionists, like the Epstein class Zionists, that's who these people are. They just got jets and stuff. They're richer than the ones I tracked down, but that's the same rules. They want ultimate release, ultimate power. They think would be bliss. No, nothing is off limits. So you got to keep in mind how to fight these people. First of all, they have no boundaries whatsoever. No boundaries. They will commit genocide in a heartbeat. They don't care, man, woman, child, puppies. They don't care, right? And so the only boundaries they have are the boundaries set by God, set by physics, or set by us. That's it, right? If you don't contain them, they will contain us, right? They depend on us going along with them. They depend on us being willing, and they tell us what they're going to do. Look at movies like Team America, World Police, and they're signaling they're going to blow up Panama Canal in that movie, and they're signaling these things, right? So many times in all these movies they're telling you what they're going to do. They actually say it openly in many, many ways. Anyway, go ahead, sir. You want to say something?
I think that's something that I can't understand that mindset. Because, I understand the Luciferian, illuminist, globalists. I deal with those entities, and, I'm talking supernatural evil. But the fact that they consume human flesh, the elite do that, the fact that the Epstein Cannibal Chronicles, the fact that these people that eat it, President Putin of Russia said an interesting thing. He said, I can smell the human the human smell of those who eat humans coming off of them. He's talking about world leaders. So it's no different if you're dealing with Moloch, Did
Putin say that?
Yes, he did.
Wow. The funny thing is if you would have told me even 20 years ago that millions of Americans would respect the Russian leader more than the American, I'd be like, you're out of your mind. But nothing's impossible. But now it's clear. Some of the most serious Americans are like, Putin's not irrational. He doesn't want to murder all the children in the world. He's not,
I'm there. I don't believe. Listen, when you tell the truth, here's what Putin does. Right? He's pro-family.
He's very pro-family.
And he actually, I'm talking nuclear family, not whoever's, and whoever had whatever cut off. He set, just measures, and the American dollar is not a just measure. He absolutely is, what I'm saying, he's outspoken against the perversion of the West. And so when I tell people this, you don't have to. When you do that which is right in the sight of God, he blesses the rightness, and he deals with the unjust nature. And I think the whole world is looking at the United States saying, why is there so much? Epstein matters, okay? Epstein really matters because, again, if I can take people to cannibal societies, and I do it and I write about it, but the point is that, and yet we turn a blind eye to 350,000 kids disappearing, ending up on the plates and pallets, or sexually exploited. There is no the moral compass. I got news for you. It's GPS that's being messed with beyond anything. There's no foundation, and there's a proverb that says, "If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do?" You've lived with those people, so you know there is a mentality where there is no right, there is no wrong, and whatever they do because they can get away with it. So how do again, MAGA people? By the way, I was never one of them. I said America needs to repent again, not be great again. How is it that people believe that the person that's got us in this mess is going to get us out of this mess? The definition of insanity. And so when you hear his big, beautiful bullshit ballroom, you find out that, it's going to be the cerebral cortex for the ultimate spy mechanism. It's not at Langley, it's going to be in the White House. And big, beautiful everything. Trump just said 6G. Well, 6G is called the Genesis 6 frequency. Long story there. But the point being is why will people give people who have no, I would say, concern for life, why would they think that the people that don't care about anybody, especially innocent life, would care about their life? Because ultimately, Frankenstein turns on his maker, and that's what I want. Because you're
Yeah.
a country, and
this guy turned on his maker.
I'm sorry.
This guy, Pinocchio.
Yep.
Right in the line. That's the storyline. He turned on his maker, right off the bat. Right.
So where look, the global drought is accelerating. The desert Southwest will be uninhabitable 1 year from now. Lake Mead, no water. I mean, it's the Colorado River water is disappearing, and all the geoengineering, weather wars, yes, they're real. All that stuff, but people just go on as if they close their eyes and whistle, the firing squad won't hit them. So
right. Yeah.
As you see the country from being outside of it, obviously you fought for your country, you love your country, but you also see a perspective, and I think that's what's so cool about what God has you doing is that you're able to bring in a viewpoint, and I'm going to say this because you've been at that point. And Doug, that's what I think is so interesting, because I am so sick of professors hypothecating, and they don't know what's going on in the world. And if you don't understand ancient history, you do. If you don't understand ancient history, you cannot see that the ploys that have worked for thousands of years are being reintroduced, just packaged neatly in a technological framework. And then people are spending all their money on AI, which is ultimately going to wipe them out.
That's true. I mean, you just said it in summary. You just said it. I mean, it's the stuff that's been going on since forever. It's just now we have batteries connected to it. Yeah. now it's done with electricity. I mean, that's really essentially it. The interesting thing is the higher level that you get of understanding of this stuff, the simpler it gets. It doesn't, like, for instance, when you see that super above grand strategy, they just want to rule the world. I mean, They want to have no rules. It's actually pretty simple. They just want to have no rules. They want to have ultimate power. It's super simple at that point, right? And then the next level is on the grand strategy level. That's fairly simple compared to strategic level. On grand strategy, they want to reduce the population of Earth. They want to, by considerable amount, on the grand strategic level. They want to get rid of these oligarchical systems that are competing, which means all of them that are not theirs, and they want to control the remnant. It's quite simple. The what they're trying to get on that second layer of the pyramid. Then on the strategic level, it starts to get complicated because now there's a lot of things going on. And then on the tactical level, I mean, that's like it's like planting every shovelful building the Panama Canal. I don't know. I mean, it's like, but I mean, on that level, it's ant work, you might say. But on the higher level, it's quite simple. They want to, let me say one thing. It's very important because you said something that was super important. The people that keep going along with it. Remember when Trump got reelected or whatever happened and they said, "Daddy's home." Remember that? They kept saying, "Daddy's home." It's interesting because when I was, researching the cults, and I talked with a lot of people who were joining cults, like in India and that sort of thing. And when I would talk with them, many conversations, long conversations often, I noticed a pattern that often these people, they're looking for a cult leader. And they'll say it like, "I'm looking for a way, I'm looking for a path, I'm looking for somebody to show me the path," and that sort of thing. And they'll say, but inevitably they were looking for a father figure. It would come out, right? So that always stuck with me. I'm like, wow, everyone that I meet, they're looking for like a father figure to help them and guide them. They're not evil people. They don't have guidance. And for whatever reason in their life, they didn't have a father figure, or they want a stronger one or something. But I think that's one of the ways that Trump appeals to people. "I'm strong. I'm your father. Daddy's home," right? And that's straight up cult making right there. There's still people that are in this cult. One thing about cults, I learned a lot of things about cults, but one thing I learned, let's say rule number one is nobody ever sees the cult that they're in, right? or if you do start to recognize that you're in a cult, that's actually the first step towards unzipping the IMAX movie and walking out. You know what I mean? The Truman Show. You know,
Michael. I'm sorry if I can ask something here. Look, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but given the situation that we find ourselves in, what's the alternative? Because look at the situation back in 2024. You had a Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, a laughable team versus Trump. Okay, now I understand and even would condemn the people who worship the man and have fallen into this. But what's the proposed alternative here? I guess that's my question. Go ahead.
Well, you know, the movie, the Matrix, the red pill or the blue pill. I mean, that's a false choice, right?
Right.
So this guy, never met him before, don't know his name. I was just told at the door his name's Morpheus. Okay, Morpheus something, Mr. Morpheus Smith. So I walk in, raining outside, lightning, and next thing you know, he's like, red pill or blue pill? And he's giving me water, allegedly water. So I'm choosing red pill or blue pill, you know, but in reality, that is part of the psychological trick. If people that would read and study the book, let's say Rape of the Mind by Juice Mirlu, 1956, Rape of the Mind. It's a book about menticide. And so basically how to brainwash it. But the point is that's called a false choice in logic, right? So a false choice is, well, I'm going to take the red pill for whatever reason. So now you wake up and you're out of Wonderland. And so now that's the false choice we're given with the given. See, that was slave talk. I just said we are given, right? So I use slave talk right there. We are given. These are our choices. What? No, we have other choices. Like this guy named Morpheus, power figure, deep voice, red pill, blue pill. Well, I better take the red one. But in reality, we can say, actually, who are you to give me a choice? You're not my daddy. You're not my slave maker. Actually, I'm not going to support either of those guys. I'm going to support somebody else, right? In any case, if nobody talked good about Trump or Kamala and everybody said, I'm not following them and made our own choices and lifted up our own people like our government was designed to do, that is the other choice. Another choice is, I don't want Morpheus and his red pill, blue pill. Get out of here, guy. Who are you? You know what I mean? I'm not taking pills from people. I want, this other person that's actually talking and I credibly think is going to close the border and credibly not going to put the data centers in. And, that's another choice, but falling for the false choice it works. I mean, it just works.
I agree with you. However, again, here's my problem. I am so in favor of pushing against that false dichotomy. But there's not enough. I look around and I think who would follow us to fight that false choice, to fight the enslavement? It seems like there aren't any people, or there are too few. Go ahead.
You mean that would run, say, for office?
No. Well, that too, because again,
if we trust elections,
I mean, yeah, boy, there's so much wrong with things right now. But right now, it seems like the entire West, the U.S. in particular, is on cruise control. No one is driving. No one is thinking. No one is really motivated to change or to get out of their enslavement. Is that what you see, or is there a way out of this?
There is a way. That's why I'm constantly actually talking bad about some of the ways that they enslave people mentally, right? If those who have read Juice Mirlu, The Rape of the Mind,
I have
number
book,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important to study that book. And Propaganda, those two books go together by Bernays, right? Those are like sibling books. And but if you study those books, don't just read them, but actually form a relationship with those books and really study them and think them through, like go for walks while you're thinking about them. Don't just skim it and put a lot of thought into it. Then you'll start to see, hey, wait a minute. I know what they're doing. So I mean, So they're trying to, if you do martial arts, hey, the guy's trying to put me in a headlock. I'm not just going to try to avoid the headlock. I'm going to avoid your headlock, and I'm going to put you in a headlock. I think if Sun Tzu was sitting here, if he existed, I'd say the acme of brainwashing is to sense you're being brainwashed and brainwash your brainwasher. That should be your test, right? It's like, not only are you not going to brainwash me, I'm going to brainwash you. So, you know what I mean? And so, and if people look at it that way as an offensive thing, right? Not just defense. First defend, but go for offense. Go back at them. They're not invincible. They're not invincible at all. A lot of these guys are straight up cowards, right? They're just not invincible. And so what I'm getting to is the first thing is to harden up our minds so that we're harder to fool. So how do they fool us? Juice Merleau and others have talked about for, God, I don't even know how long, centuries. I've got quite a few books here from the 18 and 1700s on this stuff. They're just, intoxicants is a number one. Intoxicants. How do we wipe out the Indians? It was getting firewater, whiskey, right? We dissolved their cultures. And the Chinese often use opium. Now, the Chinese will play like, oh, we're victims of the English opium wars. Yeah, to some degree, it was true. But the Chinese were using opium in wars before that, during that, and still do, right? Still do. In book after old book, I say the wily Chinese traders, as one missionary said in Formosa in 1890s. He's talking about how the wily Chinese traders use opium, or let's say, he said intoxicants to destroy the local indigenous people there in Formosa. But anyway, so whether it's cannabis, or alcohol or whatever, like right now in Thailand, I'm watching thousands of cannabis stores open. I've been all over there looking at it. They're doing the same in Argentina now. That's why they're under attack to destroy Thailand, because they're opening cannabis stores all over the place, right? And now the dope heads will say, what about alcohol, man? Yep, that too, right? That too. That's a primary weapon, firewater. And but cannabis, for those who don't drink the firewater but will go for the cannabis, of course, they'll say, what about the health benefits, man? Okay, you're not getting high for health benefits. You're not fooling anybody, right? Seriously, take that somewhere else. And this idea, a lot of the younger people seem to think that this is some new thing that they know a lot about and nobody else does. Let me tell you what, this stuff was going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they'll say, well, people don't become violent from cannabis. I'm like, what world do you come from, man? In the world I'm coming from, some of the most violent people are dope monkeys, right? And actually, the word dope has many terms. In the old days, dope was more opium, and anyway. And also, some people call whiskey dope. It does in the old. I'm talking 1800. But like this book right here, number 2, right here, I pulled up earlier. They're talking about how the Spanish. This is on tobacco. How the Spanish were doping up their tobacco 400 years ago. It's in this book. I got this book in a Tokyo antique bookstore. Or I got all 5 of those books. This is about the history of tobacco. They were putting something. They were 400 years ago. The Spanish were doping up the tobacco somehow. Boys, I don't know what they were doing with it, but it was making people very concerned. We act like this is all new stuff. There's, the word assassin. Let me say one thing. The word assassin came from hashin. Yeah. That's where it came from, right? The word assassin is about using that. The so-called peaceful drug to make assassins out of people.
Well, going back into ancient history, the Egyptians, man, they found cocaine in the mummies. Okay,
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was one of the biggest things and they also found.
I'm gonna look this up.
Oh, yeah. Cocaine, and again, the thing that's problematic is. There's two, this, Michael, there's 2 groups of thought. Isolationists, that people just stayed in their own backyard. That's John Wesley Powell, the Smithsonian's mantra. Or they look at real history and find out the Chinese had, multi-hundred-yard sailing ships. And Maui, the island of Maui, this is critical. Maui was one of the Egyptian navigators, and the Egyptians were able to circumnavigate the world. So, they beat Columbus by a couple thousand years. But I think it goes, you said something interesting, Doug, and we talk about this on your show all the time. People need a father figure. And that's, by the way, God is the Heavenly Father. Jesus said all of us have gone astray. And, that's kind of my main contention with humanity. Why, when they've got two choices, do they choose evil? And I know the history, and by the way, I commend you on your library. Books are I would say this, books are the ultimate portal to reality, but people don't want to live in a real world anymore. They don't even know what a real world is, real historically accurate, And a book is, look at what everybody's got now. They don't need to read. They go to AI and call Grok. And by the way, I think Grok's a crock. But anyway, the thing is
Clearly.
that, yeah, we're being assimilated. And who was it? It was either Goering or Goebbels, Nazis, said it's a good thing for us people don't think anymore. So when you divorce a people from history, when you divorce an entire nation from its, and when I say Christian history, I'm talking about biblical Christianity. I'm not talking about the Roman Catholic Church. I'm not talking about the Zionist takeover of Christianity. But the important part is this. All we, you can't say a name better than this. Jesus said, all we like sheep have gone astray. And I tell people, stray sheep become wolf bait, okay? And so you see stray sheep become wolf bait. And who do you see the disenfranchised going to? They're going to the left wing. They're going to the, and the right wing, but in my opinion, I call them zombie cons, okay? They're zombies. Yeah. And so there's no political solution, but there are foundational principles. And that's why there's so many people, even young people in the West, I don't know if you're watching, and I'm not Russian Orthodox, okay? But there's a lot of young men who are raised Lutherans or Methodists or Catholics are headed into Russian Orthodoxy because they have a history. And when you divorce a people from your history, and what you're trying to do is reinstitute an understanding of history to know how we got here. And I'm telling you what, everybody looks for a savior, in my opinion, but they deny Jesus, And I mean, look, that's my personal, well-researched opinion. And after writing a dozen books on all the weird crap that's going on in the universe, people cannot find their own way,
Well, the Bible is basically a survival manual.
You got it.
Straight up. I mean, that's the only reason that it still exists. I got a couple big ones. I read two at a time because you can study one and then flip around and see what they're saying in other places. But it's a survival manual. I mean, it actually a lot of the simple rules in there. Like years ago when I remember putting together, hey, pandemic, famine, and war always go together. One of my readers finally, she said, "You talk about that like you made it up," and I'm like, "I did." She said, "No, it's in the Bible." I'm like,
Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
I plagiarized God. I was like, if you're gonna do it, go big. I mean, I probably got it from the Bible and just forgot that was, you know what I mean? It goes into your subconscious.
Sure, death, famine. I mean, we're watching pestilence. We're watching, and I'm telling you this: why? And this is a chief bitch. When China was doing gain of function, biological weaponized warfare. The United States was funding it through Fauci, okay? And I call Fauci, in my opinion, worse than Dr. Mengele because he
clearly.
Yeah, and so, but people tended to. Why is it that they will trust authoritarian politicos, but they won't use common sense? Because I know people, Michael, I'm sure you do, some of them are dead. They just, whatever the government wouldn't tell me anything that's not true. I said, are you kidding me? Here's the thing.
Yeah.
It exists outside of the containment by whoever the ruling party is. What is it stated? History is written by the winners, but it's divorced from reality. Russia lost 27 million people fighting the Nazis. And, people forget that. And
history is often written in advance as well.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
that's where Bible prophecy comes in. You were talking
yeah.
about, some lady said, "Well, that's in the Bible," or whatever she said to you, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. How about this? You can't buy, sell, or trade except you have the mark of the beast or the number of his name. And what are we being told? If you don't fit the profile, and by the way, China built the ultimate control grid, they thought, but U.S. megacorps went to China because they didn't have any rules, and then they built what's now is known as Palantir or the Eye of Sauron. And the question that it boils right down to this: why is our own government hating its people enough to control them? Destroy them, in my opinion, and they destroy marvelously. That's one of the statements of the Antichrist: destroys marvelously. And so the Antichrist, I'm not trying to preach at you, but the Antichrist means in place of Jesus Christ. Okay, Jesus said, "I came and received me not." Another will come claiming to be claiming. He'll be claiming to be me, and then the Zionists are going to accept him. They rejected the Jews, rejected Jesus, but they're looking for another Messiah. So, if what I'm telling you, what would your first thought be if they're going to build Solomon's temple underneath the White House ballroom?
Signifying complete capture as well. You say so many things that are so important, like you say these little things that we could go down that path for hours, actually. Some of the things that you're talking about, divorcing from history, like language, you just throw it out there. We keep going. I'm telling you, I want to stop. Hit the brakes. Let's talk about this. You know what I mean? Like some of the stuff
you and I need to do a 24/7 talk.
We need to like do a series of 10 or something. Seriously, like on the language thing, like divorcing from history. One of the ways that's done is by language capture or creating new languages like modern Hebrew or modern Mandarin, right? Yep. So like when I spoke at a school in Hong Kong in 2020, and the teachers and people are there like, hey, they're taking our students over to China, and they're saying you should not be speaking Cantonese. Cantonese is for primitive people and uneducated people, and you should be speaking Mandarin. But even the Mandarin that they're talking about is modern Mandarin. It's designed to cut people off from real Chinese history, right? And likewise with Hebrew, Perlman, the guy who changed his name to Yehuda or whatever, he's the one that designed modern Hebrew, which is Israeli Hebrew. And of course they don't want Yiddish spoken in Israel. They try to knock Yiddish down in Israel, right? They don't want the Jews looking at their old history either. They want it's constantly rewriting things, either destroying old language. So oftentimes when we talk about weaponized language, we're talking on a tactical level, like preferred pronouns or whatever, which is, those are tactical battles. They're important. But on the strategic level, they'll design an entire language and wipe out the previous language, or design a language and give it the name of the old language, right? And it's actually a new language and you can't read the old language. So this is normal stuff.
Well, young people are resorting to, and listen, I'm not a fan of all of the shortcuts in text messaging and stuff. But look at we're all of the wonders and the splendors of what I would call intelligent language is given way. An emoji, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a smiley face, a crying face, Those things have existed through history, and some of the oldest, like the swastika or the Ankh. Some of those things go back, to pre-dynastic Egypt, but they have meaning. And you're talking about Chinese. Chinese has, I think, someday I'll talk to you, but not on the air, about all of the characters. There's old Chinese that's got 126,000 characters, and every Chinese character it's astonishing. But
just this morning I found a book from the 1800s. I didn't buy it yet, but it's about the etymology of old Chinese characters and what they really mean.
Well,
I didn't. That's weird that you just said that, because that's like random out of the blue. Somebody might mention that once every 5 years. And I was just literally looking at a bookstore in London today online about buying some etymology books. Etymology is very important.
It's really critical, because there's word clues, okay? And I use ancient Chinese because I got a project, and I'm going to just tell
Mhm.
you, you know about, but it's a glyph project. Got 8 people, smart people all over the world, linguists,
Mhm.
PhDs, and we're cataloging all of the ancient symbols and all the
Really?
characters.
I'm
Yeah,
super interested. Super
yeah,
interested.
I'll send it to you. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: if I tell you that Google and Meta and
Uh-huh.
the AT&T, they spent close to $750 billion to find parallel universes. And when they found entities in the
Right.
parallel universe that are mentioned in the book of Enoch, which is a real,
Right.
and they found, and then the entities which identify themselves as fallen angels started talking back to them. I mean,
Right.
it's pretty weird because you can't be a secular humanist saying there is no God and then run into God in that realm. So here's what I'm saying. It's weird.
Right.
Pretty weird what Michael just said. We're talking about ancient Chinese characters, and every intersecting line, every angle of a line is not a vowel or consonant. It's a complete thought. So you can have 2 Chinese characters that would say during the Ming Dynasty, whoever the emperor was destroyed 30 million people, which is true, by the way. Some of those guys were not nice, but it's important because when you divorce language from its original meaning and you create slanguage, okay, there is no how do I say it? It's a disconnect from reality, in
Right.
my opinion. And so this is critical, not take away, but what is important that everybody takes away, Doug, in
Mm.
my opinion, tonight's interview with Michael is the battlefields that he's seen, the fights he's been in, the changing, if you will, morals, and Thailand has got a lot of pot shops. You should come to Bozeman, Montana. There's a bank on every corner and a pot shop on every other corner. I'm not
That's
kidding.
total warfare. That's total warfare.
Yeah, I
The
know.
bank and the pot shop.
Yeah. So
I was
what?
just,
You
yeah,
know,
I was just, I was just,
you get high and give them your money, and that's
yeah.
Doug. That's not an exaggeration. Okay, man. Every time you look around, there's a new Green Cross building. There's a new reason, and I mean, if you've ever heard the what is it, Brewer and Shipley song, "One Toke Over the Line." I think every driver in Bozeman that's doing dope is over the line. They can't even stay on their side of the line. But hey man, I'm so mellow. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's
In other words, useless. The word mellow is a synonym for useless, right?
agreed.
I mean, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Agreed.
and the idea that people on dope won't do violence. By the way, the Taliban smoked dope like crazy. I was there a long time, right? 2 years, right? They grow dope like all over the place. They're like Bob Marley over there, and the Israelis. I've never seen somebody smoke more dope than Israelis. I
And
mean, I
that's
traveled a lot
interesting.
with them in India.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing. In the book of Revelation, which is the last book in the Bible, God rebukes the people because they wouldn't repent of their pharmakia or pharmakia. Okay, in Greek, that's drugs. And so we are a drug-induced nation. You've watched it happen in Europe. I remember being in Europe, 30, 40 years ago. I quit traveling, and everybody was doing everything then. It used to be hard drugs. It used to be smack. It used to be, oh, good night, Reds, IV, and everything you could shoot into a vein. But look at what's happened now. We're captive. How is this? This is a good word. We're captive to the ignorance we don't know that we don't know. Because again, you can manipulate dumb people. Nobody's going to convince you, hey, Michael, this is you really got to do this now. This is really cool. No, you've seen how to say it? You see the real world, and I'm grateful to have the ability to interview you because in the West, Michael, especially in the United States now, there's the lullaby of madness. Okay, and
Yeah,
you Bernays, and madness is interesting because what is it? People go crazy in crowds, but they come to their senses one at a time.
that's
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're seeing that. So if you would, because I think, like I said, we could go on for hours, but it's important. Really, could do that. The importance of tonight is, let's say again, what do you see the new dynamic that will come into being the minute the United States loses its world perspective? Most people don't believe we can do what we said anyway, and it's no longer the big man on the block. because we don't have the weapon systems any longer. We don't have the moral high ground. We've had our military destroyed from within. So give us, if you would, the scenario of how it plays out in your eyes.
Well, going back up to that above,
Sure.
grand strategy, but to that tippity top of that evil pyramid, I think that they want a general nuclear exchange because they're trying to kill billions of people.
Right.
And that would be the core. That would be it. I mean, obviously,
that's a good point. What will be the indicator to you that, besides mushroom clouds, but that when you're out of regular weapons, Israel's out of regular weapons. They burned through almost everything we had in our supply, and what they didn't take, the Ukraine did. But what do you think the first nuke? This is a good question, Doug. I don't know that anybody's ever asked you. If they have, I'd be surprised. But what do you see the outcome? Let's just say this: day one, after the first nuke is used in the Middle East. Let's say Israel says we can't fight Iran, we can't blow them up. Let's say that Iran takes out, and they have hypersonic cruise missiles. They got everything. They do. And we lose our place, and then Israel uses a nuclear weapon on Iran, and Iran retaliates. And I'm not even sure that Israel can do that, because look, their Iron Dome basically is kaput. But what's the day after in your mind, or even you could say the hour after in your mind?
The thing is that like October 7th was clearly faked, right? That was clearly, a lot of people were killed, but that was clearly a green flag attack. That was clearly done by the Zionists, right? Hamas may have been used as useful idiots, but that's so obvious. And there's nothing they won't do. I would not be surprised at any moment that a nuclear weapon goes off in the United States, and it's done by, look at 9/11. 9/11 was clear. And inside job, and look, our top leadership was in on it. That's clear. I mean, like the towers. I mean, that clearly, that was not organic. That was not what it was advertised to be. It took a long time for me to come around to that because you could see the evidence, but I'm like, I didn't believe our government was that evil, actually. So I thought, oh, they might be incompetent at times, but would they actually let that happen? I didn't believe that back then. So I had my own cognitive dissonance, and it took a long time to cut through that. You know what I mean? Because that was pretty deep cognitive dissonance for me. I just didn't believe our government would do that. But now it's quite clear that they did. And so somebody did it, and our government allowed it to happen, and that was used for casus belli to invade Iraq and Afghanistan, which had nothing to do with it, but it was an easy sell, and that was about raising armies to attack Iran. But, it didn't work out because we weren't competent enough to raise the armies there. But we could have, had those wars worked out, Iraq and Afghanistan, we would have had armies on either side of Iran to attack Iran. But I would not doubt that the Zionists use atomic weapons, nuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs, I don't know, but something within the United States, and then blames it on the Iranians. Remember, I put in writing many times before the U.S./Israel closed the Strait of Hormuz that we would do that and blame Iran. And that sounded crazy, but then they did it, right? Because that fits the actual groove of what they would do, right? That's just their thing. Their ultimate evil. The more evil they can do, the more fulfillment they get.
Right.
And you look at the Agoris that I studied so hard, the worst thing that they can do is more release to them. It's more of their universal power that they think that they're going to get, right? Shakti, they call it the universal. A lot of Hindus may take offense that they're using, but it's a Hindu word, right? Or Hindi word. But the Shakti is universal feminine energy. But that's what the Hindus want to get. They want to accrue as much Shakti as they can get. And how do they get Shakti? They get Shakti by, if you think about money, that would be a good parallel to the idea of Shakti. You can be born with Shakti, a lot of it. You can, if you look at it like money, you can be born with it, you can earn it, you can lose it, you can steal it, it can be stolen from you. And so the Agori cannibals, when they sacrifice people or eat them, they would prefer to eat children or sacrifice children because they have more Shakti. They haven't used it up. Or rich and powerful people are the ones that they would like to kill because they'll get more energy from them. Although killing rich and powerful people would then put you in danger of their relatives coming and getting you. But when you look at that you see the parallels with those political Zionists, like the Epstein class Zionists. They're doing the same thing. They will absolutely kill. And I've told so many people this, these really rich people, some that are very wealthy, very powerful people in some cases, but they took the jabs, right?
Yeah.
And they took the jabs. And I've told them, listen, if you took the jab, I know you're super rich and all this stuff. But guess what? They took a bullet shot at you. And they may have already killed you. You just didn't get the message yet, right? Yep. You're not on their team. You should be on our team. You know what I mean? Because they're coming for you, and taking you out just makes them look at that one clown, Scott Adams, right? That guy blocked me. He's always pushing dope. Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, right? And he took the jab. He was pushing the jab. He blocked me at some point. And he's dead now, right? He died from the jab, right? He was sycophantic to the end, right? But that was the class. One of the tells of that class, by the way, is they often are dope pushers, right? Like the dope head Joe Rogan, right? Or Elon Musk, dope heads, pushing dope, right? Those guys are pushing dope to tens of millions of young people. They are of that class that's trying to commit genocide. Elon Musk was pushing the jab. He said the science is unequivocal. He said he couldn't go to his gigafactory in Germany without taking the jab. I'm like, hello. Masako and I went to Germany multiple times, and we don't have a spaceship to go to Mars, right?
That's because, Michael, you weren't born there.
Yeah.
Musk said he's an alien. I mean, and I that's one guy I would believe was. But
I wouldn't doubt it.
Vaccassination, when you can get...
I'm going to use that term, vaccassination.
Yeah, and again, it's critical because here's the thing. No matter how much evidence you can produce historically, you can document, you can show, for instance, one of the oldest maps in the world is the Turkish Piri Reis map, and shows Antarctica free of ice and stuff like that. I love maps, okay?
Which map is that?
It's called the Piri, Piris, Reis. I think it's Rheys or Reheys. Piri Reis. Piri,
okay.
Piris.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm just saying this.
I just got some new maps from Antarctica, but they're old maps, but they're not that old.
Yeah. Have you had the Nazi maps showing the land beneath the ice with literally the rudder controls for U-2 boats?
Do you have those maps?
Yeah. I mean, I have facsimiles. I'll send them to you.
I gotta come see you, man. You gotta come see me.
Hey, Doug, you need to not that, and you need to bring a cot in the room. And Eric, we need to pay super overtime. But I would love to do, and I've done it. I know you can talk for hours, but let people just have at their questions. Because here's the deal: there are real answers, and if it's unpleasant, the unpleasantry of a true answer can save their life. It's just like the vaccassination, okay? That was a bioweapon. And now we're hearing the big, beautiful, badass vaccine. I mean, there's a disconnect. I tried to talk people who are dead now out of taking the vax. And they can't do it. People I know, I can't lose my job. I said, well, guess you're not going to do any good to your kids if you lose your life. Wait,
hold on. You just said the big, beautiful, badass. Is there another jab with that name or something?
No. I'm just making fun because there is a new one coming. Okay.
The reason I said that is because it is important to watch. Like when I was in Netherlands, there were political signs for the Bodemburgerbeweging. And you only need to see that for 10 seconds. And it was selling itself as conservative, protecting farmers. And I was like, that's BBB. That's the enemy. And the farmers I was talking with, they're like, no, Caroline Vanderplas, she was the leader. She's very good. I'm like, no. Look, it's on the sign, BBB, right? That's all you need to know. Boredom, burger, beweging, but build back better. You know what I mean? That's like, and the big, beautiful bill. I mean, they're telling you who they are. They're telling you what it's about.
And my answer to that is big, beautiful bullshit.
Right.
Fill in the blank after that, because again, everything is costing the taxpayer money, and we're spending money we don't have. See, and so the only thing that's left is repudiation. Every nation in the world that gets too indebted, they cancel currency, come out with something new. And but nobody's going to buy the central bank digital currency or allow it to be exchanged. You know, we can put it out, meaning the United States, but nobody's going to exchange anything for it. And maybe you don't know this, but right now, the oil Arab Emirates will not accept US dollars, at least before the bombing, because they wanted something commoditized that had real value. When President Putin put a floor under gold of $50 a gram, $1,600 an ounce, he did something that was amazing, because that's...
When did he do that?
Huh? He did that 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So the official value of gold in the U.S., if there is any gold in the U.S., is still $42 an ounce. Well, Trump's too smart to let $42 an ounce gold stand, so he's got to revalue it at some point. But
what do you know a lot about gold? What do you think he'll revalue it to?
Well, there's really smart people that take the amount of debt, they divide the amount of gold that we supposedly have. And remember when they were going to audit Fort Knox, President Trump?
Yeah.
Go and audit? Yeah.
For the tungsten in there? And they can see how much tungsten we have?
Yes, exactly. And prior to that, there was a meeting with the Fed, and they said, if you do this, it'll destroy the economy instantly. There's no gold in there. There's not enough gold to even come. But to answer that is, there are people that say, in order to match the debt to dollar for gold, it can go up to, $35,000 an ounce. Some guys are saying $250,000. But here's the point. The U.S. dollar has no specie or no commodity tie to value anymore.
Yeah.
So anyway, and Doug, I think this is an interesting thing.
What's your instinct? What do you think it'll be revalued to?
I think they're going to hit the 10K mark, $10,000 an ounce. I think that's within probably no later than 6 to 9 months. And if we go to war, the first nuke, I think the first nuke will run it up there, because here's the thing. The United Arab Emirates and everything from Dubai, Bahrain, Yemen, all these places, they have a lot of gold. But again, they still need something to buy something, and they don't have any water now. So the recommodization, I mean, real money, remember this dollar was exchangeable for so many ounces or grams of silver, or the gold notes. Most people don't realize we had currency that were gold notes. So I think what's happening is we're seeing a political hypnotist amulet, okay? People are being told, neuro-linguistic programming, it's going to get better, Michael. You know it's going to get better. Mr. Hagman, I'm telling you, I'm promising you, brother, just like a television evangelist, you're going to see it turn around. America's going to be great again. Really? How? And so when you ask those two questions, really and how, and I'm just using you, Doug, as an example because I see you on my screen.
Sure,
but the point being is that we're now watching the disintegration of the entire world. And that's, again, the upper echelon. They want everybody but 500 million people alive.
Yeah.
They want to leave 500 million. That's the globalists, and one of the biggest globalists in the world.
That's not hard to do, actually, if you're in the right positions. That's not hard to do.
No, and listen, it can be done, and pun intended, in heartbeats, because all you got to do is basically spray enough crap in the atmosphere, make it frequency sensitive, and then like the Charles Bronson movie from 40 years ago, telephone, they hit a frequency through a cell. In his day, they didn't have cell phones, they had telephones, and it activates a binary component of a aerosol poison, and people, everybody has telephones. That's how they found out, by the way, cell phones, how many people died in China, because China, you're required to have a cell phone, and somebody got smart and went into the records, and there weren't, a few million people dead. There was closer to 100 million people dead in China.
When I was in Hong Kong, the Hong Kongers were very worried that they were building, and this would be 2019. I got kicked out in 2020, but the Hong Kongers were very, yeah, it was in the news. But the Hong Kongers were very concerned that they were building a massive crematorium near Hong Kong, but over in China. And then last year I tried to find articles about it, and I didn't see any. But it was clearly in the news back then. I wonder if it's
an
been
interesting
scrubbed.
thing about that. China had a during the COVID pandemic, they had an agreement with one of the biggest portable crematorium builders in the world. They were in the Philippines. I know somebody in the Philippines who's really knowledgeable in what goes on there, and they were buying crematoriums, that could massively incinerate bodies. It was almost like a production line, only in reverse. And they were built, and I mean, they were calculating, Michael, when you've got 8,000 crematorium, they can put through so many hundred people an hour times running night and day. You remember they built that big, beautiful hospital over a field that satellite photos showed was the biggest mass grave that anybody had ever seen. And within days, there's a big building over it, Well, here's the deal. Yeah. There is no expectation of truth when you're dealing with people that want to control every thought you make, every thought you can take, every dollar you can spend or unit. Universal income, you know what that's called? Slave wages,
That's right. That's right.
And so that's where we're headed. And so again, watching what's gone on in the United States, it's only getting worse. And that's why I keep pushing. But I think the bottom line pushing, you said it already, it's a nuclear exchange or a nuclear detonation that is going to change everything. And I'm on record as saying the first nuke that goes off, the history of the world changes. I'm not talking about, in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm talking about the next nuclear weapon. And, the point being is that Israel has their Samson option, and Iran knows that. And the biggest lie in the world is Iran is so many years away from having enough uranium or plutonium. You know this in Japan. Japan would be the world's leading producer of atomic weapons. If they wanted to, they have the most plutonium. The breeder reactors, they got like 9,000 tons of plutonium. That's a lot.
Well, that's enough to build a bomb or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to overtalk you, but I think there's kind of I don't know the term, but there is a malaise of just denial, and denial it's anything that's uncomfortable, automatically dismissed. Anything that doesn't agree with my political perspective, automatically dismissed.
Yeah.
You can give every indication of why you draw the conclusions you do and why I draw the conclusions. We can undergird our positions. And I'm just saying this, but people don't read. Most people wouldn't even know what to do with a library like that. They wouldn't, like behind you. But
it's because the library itself is not just a bunch of books. It's actually a methodically designed architecture of knowledge.
Yeah, and it's
actually like this is a working library. It's not a collection of books. It's a big difference.
Yep, and that's why ancient antiquity, like the Library of Alexandria, Egypt, was burned.
Man, yeah,
but
they burned it.
The entire Library of Alexandria now, people that have finally figured out that the city beneath the Giza Plateau, 100 square miles, with all of the Library of Alexandria pretty much on the walls. You'll never hear that because Egypt was bought off by the United States not to reveal that stuff. Just like Hackman's house, okay, Gene Hackman. What are Egyptian hieroglyphics, Sumerian cuneiform, and star charts that go back 16 to 24,000 years doing on the ground in Gene Hackman, two-time Academy Award winner in New Mexico? I don't know if you followed that story, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So in the world of the mystical warriors, and the cannibals are, they believe that by eating children's flesh and drinking their blood, the adrenochrome, they take the essence of life. And innocence is a big deal. They have to have innocent children. And they're vampires, brother. They are vampires. And so the Epstein cover up and cover over. I think that's the rest of the world. And you were just with Catherine Austin Fitts. By the way, that is one amazing woman. I haven't had a chance, but yeah, she's a very, very smart. Bottom line, go to the heart of the matter.
She's brilliant. She's brilliant.
I don't know if anyone's smarter than her. I don't. So saying that, not to flatter, but you really were blessed to have that time with her. And Doug, here's what kind of is critical at this point, I think, in this interview, is the world is believing hell lines. A hell line is a headline written by Satan himself, and they're only being entertained. And if you look at the entertainment derangement syndrome, it's that's what Fox News, and I mean and then you've got MSNBC, all of those major news sources, magazines, they're all owned by the same people. And the idea is they only have one thing: to minimize human life and to, in essence, lift up the eye of Sauron. People are willingly worshiping and again, they used to say the chains that enslave them. No, they guillotine blades that will behead them. It's amazing that you would be talking about the cannibals, because it's a big deal. 35 years ago, and I just want to share this with you. I started talk radio on KHNC Johnstown, Colorado, and I said this, and I've said it on Doug's show, but I don't think you've ever heard me say it. I said 35 years ago, when cannibalism fills the headlines of the day and the major volcanoes are underway, know that tribulations with an S have begun. And it doesn't get worse than death, hell, and the grave, and famine. Famine. You've seen famine. We used to see those starving Biafran kids, and you feel sorry, or you see the people that are starving, or there's no water. Until recently, Iran was in one of the biggest droughts in the world. Guess what? They stopped allowing the geoengineering or weather warfare, and now they've got water and they've got rain again.
Dane Wigington talks about that a lot. Dane Wigington.
I know him. He's one of the best researchers on geoengineering. And I want people to understand this. They will not be able to understand the world they live in without understanding geoengineering, chemtrails, and years ago, actually decades ago, when I broke the story on chemtrails, and I called it the death spray. All you had to do is read the U.S. Air Force. They put out a public piece, weather control as a force weather control as a force modifier, and we in the weather 2025.
I got to show you something in that regard. I found these books. I've never heard of this. Danny Dunn. Have you ever heard of that series? I'd never heard of it until I ran across it just doing research on this stuff. So I ordered these books. They just came in. And look at this. Hold on. Danny, this is a children's book. Danny Dunn, Weather Machine. I'm going to show you a couple more. Okay, Danny Dunn. Where's the other ones at? Here's an interesting one. Danny Dunn, the Homework Machine. There you go. There's a presage for AI, right? And then here's another one. Danny Dunn, Heat Ray. Shooting a heat ray out of the airplane. Yeah. And here's another one. Danny Dunn, Automatic House. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, really.
I was just doing homework and I ran across these. I was like, I need to look at these. So that's why I ordered them. Yeah, they just came in.
Most people wouldn't even realize, but you know who the actual architect for Walt Disney of Tomorrowland was? You're going to love it. Dr. Werner von Braun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and Dr. Werner von Braun, his book, and Doug, you and I have talked about this a lot over the years, but the Mars Project was talk about colonizing Mars. And guess what the name of the control group for Mars was? The Elon, E-L-O-N.
Not a coincidence.
So Danny Dunn, in my day and age, I'm older than you are, probably don't act my age, but I hope I don't. But the bottom line is there were a series of books, not only the Hardy Boys, but Tom Swift. And Tom.
Wait, you've heard of Danny Dunn before?
No, I'm just saying the
Oh,
only thing
I've
I can.
never heard of him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Tom Swift was the equivalent. And Tom Swift, I
Oh,
remember
Tom
one of his
Swift.
titles
Okay.
was Tom Swift and the Space Solartron. It was like the Hardy Boy
Tom
book.
Swift.
Yeah, all kinds of cool futuristic stuff, but it was put into a children's book.
If
Yeah.
may I interject something here?
Yes,
Because
sir.
I went over this. Steve. I don't think I've ever shared this with you. And Michael Yon, you might find this of interest. The creator of the iconic Cinderella Castle mosaic at Disney World is a guy by the name of Hans Scharf. I don't know whether you know that name. Hans Scharf was one of the foremost Nazi interrogators on the planet.
Oh, yeah. I've
Okay.
read about it. He would let prisoners escape and that sort of stuff to make relationships with them.
Yes. As a matter of fact, the interrogation techniques that the studies. Okay, so without getting a long story, but there was a lot of interrogation or interview techniques that I studied, and the antithesis of some of the harder ones would be the Scharf technique, and that goes into the mind control and brainwashing area, which I did a couple of shows on before. So I wanted to mention that, and I didn't mean to overtalk you, Steve. And while you have a pen there, Michael Yon, what Steve was mentioning, the map. This is pretty bizarre. I had a listener who was listening in Australia, heard Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan, who sent me an email about the Piri-Reis map. The correct spelling is Pirireis.
Piri.
Right, and then Reis. And that map was named after the Ottoman admiral by the same name in 1513.
1513.
Right.
1513.
Yes.
1513. Wait, where was that? Where's that admiral from?
Turkey.
The Ottoman Empire. 1513.
Ottoman. 1513. Huh. That's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. Admiral Piri-Reis. So,
Very.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I saw you struggling for that spelling before, but man,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. And Steve, to your recent point, I got to point out that I had a police officer I spoke with contacted me, a couple of months ago. We're still in contact. Who responded to the Gene Hackman scene? Okay, I'm not going to go beyond that. It was not the original call, but subsequent service that he had to perform. The tunnels actually extended, along with the bodies extended, from a neighboring property through the Hackman estate, and I'm not sure where. He's not either because of some limitations posed by the people there. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out to you. He's willing to come on, possibly, and kind of tell what he knows. So I just want to get all of that in.
Yep.
Okay.
And Doug, tomorrow you may have gotten it tonight. Anybody, and Michael, I'm going to send you a copy of it. We just released the glyph report of what the symbols meant in Gene Hackman. And by the way, he couldn't go, your law enforcement, he couldn't go beyond this welded steel door that looked like a giant vault, okay? But this is the area, remember, 1937, all the stuff found, you'll love this story. 1937, all of the papers that were put in crates were like it was a depository for advanced technology. And there were actual star charts on the floor that my glyph team, just really smart people, not like me, but really smart people that God provided, and talking about 12,000-year-old constellation clusters, okay? 12,000. That means there had to be an eyewitness observer. And so the Gene Hackman thing it's a huge occult repository of advanced weapons. And I'm not talking earthly weapons. I'm talking about, like in Hindu, the Vimanas, okay? And most people don't realize that that Gene Hackman was a recluse, but The house just went on the market, I think 3 days ago, for $6.5 million. But there are specific requirements of the purchaser. Number one, they got to be cleared by no such NSA, and number two, that door, they will not allow it to be unsealed. You've heard of the Taos hum, you guys, TAOS, Taos, New Mexico hum.
Yep.
In those days, there's tunnels all over from Los Alamos, White Sands. That's the nuclear weapons development area. And there are even Nazi documents down there of advanced weaponry. So I just put out a report tonight. It's 31 pages, I think 30 pages, and I'll send it to you tomorrow. It's by subscription, but you need to have it. So what I'm trying to say is this: when in relationship that when you have Oppenheimer, Robert Oppenheimer, obviously he's credited with building the atom bomb, saying he has become the destroyer of worlds. He's quoting the Bhagavad Gita.
Shiva.
Shiva. Yep.
Shiva.
And in the Vedic text, VEDIC text, it talks about ancient atomic warfare. It talks about propelling spacecraft, not just aircraft. And in I think it was 4 or 6 years ago, NASA had an advanced spacecraft seminar, and the people from India, very bright people, came and showed them the text from the Vimanas in the building, how they propelled them, how they flew them, and everything. And we're talking about stuff that's anti-gravity, okay? And that's a big deal now. So what I guess I'm saying is the Gene Hackman thing is the most mind-blowing thing. And people say, well, what's this purpose that you're doing with all the ancient symbols? I can tell you this: an ancient symbol from 24,000 BC, actually it just was stated, and I've stated this all along in the stuff I've written, but there was a universal culture on Earth 36,000 years ago that shared the same language. That's actually on my website, and it was carried by the Daily Mail, because this is what Graham Hancock and others were trying to talk about. And he usually goes back to the first ice age, but it goes even further back than Graham Hancock. By the way, I think he's one of the smartest men in the world, but there's no buts. But I think what people are missing is the whole discourse on fallen angels, because the book of Enoch talks about who taught mankind how to make weapons of war, who taught them how to do potions, drugs, all this stuff. And yet now we're dealing with a A-list actor who's died at 95, and they still haven't released what he died from. His wife, almost 3 decades younger than he was, or 2 at least, died, and he sits with her body in the house for over a week. Who's going to sit with their dead spouse's body in the house? There's so much weird stuff, but it goes right back to all of this antiquity. And by the way, the Piri Reis map, that guy who was the Ottoman sea captain referred to earlier maps. And the big deal about that, Michael, is Antarctica was free of ice in 1512 or whatever.
Right.
So what I'm saying is this: the more that people find out, and just like Doug, you're talking about the gentleman that called you, I'll come on with him. But here's what I want people to understand. When you're dealing with this stuff, why are 12 scientists who are advanced physics, astronomers, and others just disappearing? Why are they ending up dead? How can a woman who's a jogger, who's a brilliant scientist, be giant? Well, they look around, she's gone, and there's no trees, there's nothing. Well, there's a whole different world of advanced physics called hyperdimensional physics. That's not BS, that's the truth. So, here's the thing. When you, Michael, are talking about the highest level, that's where those people live. And those people believe they're going to live forever. One of the most famous transhumanists in the world is Zoltan Istvan. And he said, at the heart of every transhumanist, at the heart of those of us who believe in singularity, a combination of organic and machine, we don't want to die. They want to live forever. And so, so why this is relevant is some of the maps, okay, that we've turned up, and you'd be surprised, aren't just maps of terrestrial landforms. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a thing called the map of the Creator that's like 400 and some thousand years old, and it's engraved rock. And somebody said, wait a minute, this is the Ural Mountains. So the amount of real information that people are allowed access to, it's really, you've got to be an adept. You've got to be in the, the mystery religions, and they believe gnosis is what saves someone, knowledge, and it isn't what saves someone. It's what lures them in. It's the bait that fishes them in and reels them in. You know,
Right.
you're special if you know this secret potion or this blah blah blah. But it's so weird. Again, tonight I'm kind of blown away when you're talking about Chinese characters, and
Let me tell you the name of this book I found. I haven't bought it yet. As soon as we hang up, I think I'll just buy it because I was literally just looking that up.
Is it English?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you buy it, if not, send me the link. I'll buy it. But here's the thing: what people need to understand about your show, and obviously this isn't flattery, but you've afforded me 4 years of Thursdays to get whatever God's laying on my heart. But these coincidences or these synchronicities, I believe, are the fingerprints of God's validating something, because in the mouth of two or three witnesses, let every word be established. And I got news for you. You can't go through 126,000 Chinese characters with anything less than a supercomputer. And the guys who are doing with quantum computers can do it at a trillion bits of what are they called? Petaflops of information in a second. That would take a supercomputer like 1,000 years. But that's how complex this stuff is. But at the end of the day, it's incredibly simple, because if you start out with the knowledge, you're dealing with the supernatural. And supernatural means not a natural explanation, dimensional reality that most people don't realize does exist. Then you can understand that now all of the most sophisticated AI engineering programs, the fastest energy, all AI programs need energy. And what they're coming up with is there's nothing new under the sun. And all those books behind Michael's shelf, those would be considered important data points in large language models, LLMs. But what's really critical is they say they've exhausted large language models. That's not true. Good night. The Library of Congress has millions of volumes of books, and there's no way to scan a 1,000,000-volume book. And they have millions of letters, and they have miles of shelving. So what is important is remembering that there are certain points that synchronize in history that are relevant at the point. And with everybody being seduced by AI, I mean, I think, I know people think it's just the coolest thing since sliced bread.
No way.
Yeah. But I'm not one of them. So, Michael, thank you for bringing that up, because that really,
I found it.
Yeah, really
I found it. Yeah. In fact, I would. It's called 19. Let's see. Is it from 1915? It's Chinese characters, their origin, etymology, history, classification, and signification. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was just about to buy it, but I just there was a couple of other books I'm getting at the same time. Another one's on other etymology stuff.
Yeah,
one of them's from 1880.
Yeah.
And I found another one here that I almost bought today, but I'll do it as soon as we get off. It's from 1877. It's called Gold, Legal Regulation for Standard of Gold and Silverwares in Different Countries of the World. For some reason, I thought that would be interesting. I don't know. There's something about that I think would be interesting.
Well, thank you for coming on tonight, because, again, bottom line, the takeaway for me, Doug, and listening to Michael, is that there is no way out, it appears at this point, except nuclear option. And if I'm just saying, this is where you think it might end. Is that accurate representation of what you said?
Yeah. I think that's what they're going to do. That's my guess, because they don't have limits. They have bunkers, but not limits.
But I'll tell you,
and they have insanity.
About bunkers were never meant, even you take NORAD, you take the biggest bunkers in the United States, the Denver International Airport, none of them were built with the idea they might have to withstand a 25 megaton nuclear weapon. We don't have them that big. Russia has the Tsar Bomba, 100 megaton, and they exploded it. It only went 50 megatons, but that matters. And Doug, thank you. I know we're going over, and I apologize.
Take your time.
Thank you,
Mm.
Michael. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. When I get this Chinese book, I'll tell you about it. But
Okay.
there's something about that, and I want to know more about ancient symbols because that's clearly, you know, we're constantly out. By the way, photographing just modern graffiti, but it's just graffiti. But I mean, but it's there's something there's something about that as well.
Well, yeah, and there's many times that modern graffiti because there are really people who are demon possessed. Okay, I'm talking another entity possesses their body, and some of those people, especially when they're involved in crimes, they have all kinds of weird occult
Mhm.
symbols. And those weird occult symbols aren't coming from their knowledge base, meaning the human person that played with the wrong stuff or snore the wrong stuff. But the bottom line is it's becoming more prevalent every day. I mean, seriously, every day. Gene Hackman is the biggest story I know, and I will send that to you. And Doug, if you'll check your email, you should already have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you see that there? I saw these 1D cows. I must have seen them in 50 countries. BNE was here. I still see them occasionally. They were everywhere. I mean, literally, I probably saw that in 50 countries. BNE was here. Did you ever see that? Or
No,
it'll say B. I'm sorry, it'll say BNE. It'll say BNE.
Yeah, B as Bravo, November Echo.
Bravo, November Echo. BNE.
Okay.
And those things were, and actually, I think at some point they were even on 60 Minutes.
Oh.
I was like, there's that BNE. I took so many photos in so many different countries. I'm like, there's the B. I mean, you would go into a restaurant at some point and there'd be like BNE sticker on a table or something, or out everywhere. BNE symbols. Still occasionally we'll see one in many, many countries. Again, it must have been 50 countries. Like, who's doing this?
I don't know. I've not even seen the symbol, but now I'll go investigate it.
Yeah, because if you were in your own town, I don't know, San Francisco or something, and you saw B&E, you might just think, oh, it's some local club or something. I don't know. But I'm seeing it, or I used to see it everywhere. Hong Kong, China, Thailand, all over Europe, United States, everywhere. Yeah.
Well, this has certainly been interesting. People get to watch in real time Flint sharpening Flint. And again, I thank you for your contribution. I think, you have got amazing story to tell. I pay attention when you talk. I don't have to relive your experience. I couldn't, but you have your experience to share, and it's real world. It's not pragmatic nonsense at a university level of, a shovel full of horse manure backed up by a dump truck full of, pig manure. So that you can tell me I don't really like higher education because, I mean, there's some good education, but the Ivy League schools have turned into poison Ivy League schools.
I've noticed. Yeah.
Doug, thank you.
Well,
thank you, Doug.
Just hold on one second. Eric, the tech, can you pop that up real quick? What I sent. Gentlemen, just hold on one second, please. And Michael Yon, is this what you're referring to? Hopefully he can put that up. I somehow I heard about that. Okay, I don't know if it was a fever dream or what. Is that what you're referring to, Michael Yon?
Yeah, that's it. I saw those all over the place.
Okay.
And that cocoa thing too. Not as much, but I've seen the cocoa thing too. A lot less.
Yeah, I think that cocoa is a regional, something regional. That B&E, I've got no idea what that is.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why I kind of remember that. Again, just like a fever dream. But perfect. Wow. Fantastic program. Folks, Michael Yon, follow him. Or, you know what? Subscribe to his Substack. Big Honey, Michael Yon in action. And that is, let's see, where is that? michaelyon.substack.com. I'll put the link in the program description box. And then, of course, Steve Quayle, his Glyph project. What are we talking about? Exactly this. Fantastic. And I want to thank you very much for just your vast knowledge, information, and your kindness for coming on. And Hey, give me yesterday, or give me today's lottery numbers from Japan, since you're a day ahead. Maybe we
Speaking
can,
of lottery numbers, okay, this is another weird thing to say, because I was just looking at another book that's in my inbox, 1932, Lotteries and Sweepstakes, an Historical, Legal, and Ethical Survey. Whoever brings up lottery numbers, lottery numbers, and where'd you come up with the idea about lottery numbers in Japan?
Wow.
I never. You just said give me the lottery numbers in Japan, right?
Well, I figure you're a day ahead. You can kind of, give me a heads up on what's
you're
coming.
joking. You're joking.
No, that's all right.
Because I'm sorry. I don't even. Lottery to me is just out of the blue.
Yeah, it's a very tired old joke. So no worries. But I want to thank you very much. And Michael, feel free. I'll tell you, anytime you'd like to come on with Steve, or in addition to impart your vast knowledge.
Let's do it.
Do it, man.
This has been great. All right, y'all. Bye.
Steve, thank you very much. Michael, thank you.
Good night,
Folks,
Doug. Thank you.
See you next week. All right.